So, good evening, guys. I wanted to welcome you again to our final workshop of this series. It's Life Care Planning with Gordon Holmes. I think you've all heard this spiel enough, so I'm not going to get too specific about things, but don't forget you can post comments and questions. I'm sure it's small enough that if you want to just unmute and ask your questions, Gordon won't mind. We are captioning it, and we did set up the recording so that folks who didn't make it tonight could see this later. If you need any kind of certificate, I have an evaluation that I will give you the link to. In order to get your certificate, you complete the evaluation, and then the last page of it sends you to a second form, real quick one that just asks for your name and email in another window. You must go back to the first window and hit submit so that I get your eval. So I think people are going to that new window and then forgetting about the first part. So if you have any problems today and you need help getting back in or something, I will put my phone and email in the chat box. And I'm going to turn everything over to you, Gordon.
Fantastic. All right. Let me do screen share and bring up the workshop. Thank you so much. And okay. Okay, hopefully the PowerPoint is showing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this evening, and thank you so much everyone for joining in, is creating a life care plan, and it encompasses a variety of elements. And tonight is a great evening for any and all questions that you want to ask. We'll be able to take a little bit more of a measured pace than previous evenings. So let me let's see here. Okay, all right. So all right, so creating a life care plan that provides for both of your own needs and those of your child can be overwhelming, making it all the more important to assemble a team of trusted advisors, such as, okay, we have a comment. Okay, very good. Yep. All right, such as financial professionals with special needs training, attorneys. So obviously as a special care planner, I'm the first. Then we have attorneys in our informal network. And we have attorneys throughout the state of Indiana, spread about. We have an attorney in the Fort Wayne area, one in the Lafayette area, two attorneys in Indianapolis, actually a third, including the Social Security attorney. We have attorneys in Southern Indiana, including New Albany and Evansville. And yeah, so as it relates to the ability to put together estate plans, special needs trusts, this type of thing, also deal with guardianship issues, and then appealing government benefit decisions, which could include Social Security saying no for SSI as an example, and then Medicaid administrative hearings. So also appealing government decisions on Medicaid waivers. There's just a variety of legal actions that are a part of the special needs landscape. And so we're very thankful that we have attorneys, again, throughout Indiana to assist, and we can make appropriate referrals. Accountants, in fact, I was just at a conference today of special education directors and their staffs. That's what's called ICASE, I-C-A-S-E, and they get together twice a year. First of all, for the spring conference, which is always the last week of January or early February. So I kind of chuckle at the notion that it's a spring conference because it does not feel like spring out there. And so someone came up to me during the conference and they were indicating they were looking for an accountant that understood special needs trusts, et cetera, and so forth. So having accountants or CPAs that we can make referral to when appropriate is helpful as well. Bankers, social workers, and advocates, and medical providers. So it takes a group to do special needs planning, and I'm thankful that over the years we've cultivated relationships in a variety of disciplines so that we can be more thorough in the support that we provide to the families that we talk and work with. So life care planning, there's kind of the before 18 and 18 and after. 18 is a significant age change, and it does affect things, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But before age 18, Medicaid waivers. And Medicaid waivers are more important than ever. The state of Indiana, in their effort to be fiscally responsible, are making things a bit challenging on the waiver front. So please hang in there and don't be discouraged. There is a wait for the most popular waiver in Indiana, which is the Family Supports Waiver. The wait is up to about 3 years. There are reasons why they would expedite one's movement on the waiver waiting list, and that would be a parent who is active duty military, a veteran, or if the child is shortly exiting their secondary education experience. So for those reasons, they would escalate someone's position on the waiver waiting list. Let's see. Outside of the family supports waiver, we have the health and wellness waiver, and there's a bit of a wait for that and so forth. So, but nevertheless, waivers are really important for several reasons. One is because with a waiver comes services, and you get a budget. And the budget for services is helpful. And there are different services at different ages. So there are services for the younger crew that may be under the age of 14 or 15. And then there are services that kick in kind of post-puberty when they're starting a transition into adulthood. And so with a waiver, there's a season for every shift or change on the special needs journey. And so engaging as early as possible is helpful. That way time is counting for you instead of against you in terms of coming up on the waiver waiting list. In addition to that, just about like going to your favorite restaurant, there's a child's meal and or a child's menu and adult menu. And the same with the waiver services that may be super important at younger ages, such as PAC hours, personal attendant care hours, and various therapies, speech and otherwise, may give way to services such as having a behavioralist, a rec therapist, or community habitation. Then there's supported employment, using waiver dollars to assist with transportation to potential employment. So again, the waivers, the menu of services, all very important at each stage along the way. And then in addition, as a result, of course, to having a Medicaid waiver, there's disability Medicaid, which is incredibly helpful in terms of covering healthcare expenses, etc. So lots of reasons. Let's see here. Give me one moment. Okay. Yeah. Alrighty. Let's see. So we have Medicaid waivers, and don't think the ship has sailed. It's almost never too late to engage and pursue a Medicaid waiver. So don't think you've missed the boat. I work with families whose children are in their teens, even in their 20s, working on the Medicaid waiver front. Please do, I want to remind you that Medicaid waivers are available regardless of a parent's or family's finances. So parents' income, parents' net worth or assets, the quality of life that's enjoyed is not a factor in terms of eligibility for a Medicaid waiver. assets belonging to the recipient of the waiver services is an interest and a concern. And so I frequently meet with families whose children's have savings accounts, investment accounts, UTMA accounts, mutual funds, CDs, government bonds, and they've accumulated, $5,000 or $10,000 or possibly more. And then it becomes a roadblock to their accessing Medicaid waiver services. So, but as I mentioned in earlier workshops, most all of these issues are fixable. Most all the issues are fixable. It's how much you know and what options are available, that type of thing. But we're working with people all the time to deal with resource issues to either qualify for benefits or maintain eligibility for benefits they're already receiving. So before age 18, that earliest phase, of course, is birth to age 3. And I sometimes get a call from, a couple of times actually, I've gotten a call from families in the NICU where they have a 1-week-old or a 2 or 3-week-old, that type of thing. And we really start early. But I also have families that make their way to me where the parents are in their 70s or 80s, and the adult child with special needs may be in their 40s or 50s. And then there are also the somewhat unusual situations where people that are reaching out to me are either adoptive parents or guardian parents. And that's as a result of the individuals taking on the parenting of a child or children with special needs. In some cases, it's because the parents have passed away, the parents are disabled. So there are a variety of circumstances. I know I just met with a family in the last week where the mother is unable to provide care, and the father was killed due to a weather incident, a tornado that actually tore through Kentucky. You may have heard about it in the last couple of years. It was a horrible day where tornadoes ripped through Kentucky, and he unfortunately was at work that day and was working for the candle company, where I think most all the employees that were on site that day were killed as the factory imploded due to the tornado. So we have a great aunt and an uncle in that case. And so we have all kinds of different combinations and family situations, etc. But first steps, birth to 3, early intervention, and then starting at age 3, of course, an IEP, individual education plan. And then usually Article 7 calls for the schools to start talking about transition planning starting at the age of 14. And then ultimately to determine what academic track the child is on, whether diploma track or alternative track, what we would perhaps traditionally call a certificate track, that type of thing, and so forth. So in all of these different age categories have different benefits, different supports, etc. So really key is we work with families to figure out just where they're at in the journey and what what the timeline is, what benefits are appropriate, and then building a legal structure. And this can include everything that we've covered in prior sessions, such as setting up estate planning documents, including a special needs trust, deciding about guardianship, yes or no, and then alternatives to guardianship. Then you've got starting at age 18, which is kind of the transition, and when guardianship usually becomes front and center, do we or don't we, and what's an appropriate response? Or in the case like I mentioned a few minutes ago, where family members, grandparents, or a great aunt or uncle, in the case that I was working with, decide to become guardians, they may be going to court to get guardianship over a 12 or 14-year-old. So again, all circumstances are different. Guardianship and alternatives, review of legal structure, and that's because as a child becomes older, it's time to review any planning that might have been done prior to age 18, and all of the representative selections that have been made, who is executor of a will, who is going to be the successor trustee of the special needs trust, and so forth. And in some cases, There are older siblings that at the time initially of planning, the siblings might have been, 12, 14, or 16. And now that the child with special needs has gotten older, those adult siblings are 22 or 26 or 30 years old. And we update estate plans and our special needs plans to reflect that they are going to play a pivotal role in the plan because the siblings are not only willing, but they're now old enough to take that position on. Medicaid, as we discussed before, which usually comes with the Medicaid waiver, where if one does not have a waiver by the age of 18, then typically they would receive Medicaid as a result of applying for SSI, Supplemental Security Income. And as we've discussed in previous sessions, the SSI benefit is now up close to $1,000 a month, and we're working with families right and left to assist them in pursuing SSI. Medicare. Medicare is a benefit that most often comes to our young people with special needs as a result of drawing SSDI. SSDI, as you see, slightly below Social Security, disability, income, or insurance. And they would start drawing SSDI as a result of building up their own employment record, which only requires part-time employment. So our young people with special needs that may start a part-time job when they're 18 or 20 or 22, or sometimes eligible to draw Social Security disability benefits in as little as 2 to 3 years of part-time, again, very part-time employment. Usually it only takes 12 to 15 hours a week in employment to earn at a pace that allows Social Security disability credits to accumulate. I think the limit for the current calendar year is right at close to $600 a month in earnings in order to be accumulating Social Security credits. And if you break that $600 per hour down, if as an example, they're earning $12 an hour, which many of our children with special needs are earning $12 or more, that would be 50 hours in a month, and that would break down further to only 12 hours a week. So again, very part-time employment is sufficient to building a Social Security record, and then they literally can draw Social Security disability benefits off of their own record. Now, most people think when you make a claim for or draw Social Security disability benefits, then you have to stop working, but that's simply not the case. They can actually draw Social Security disability benefits while they continue to work. So Social Security is literally paying them a benefit on a monthly basis while they're going to work 2, 3, 4 times a week and continuing to work and earn income. In fact, the Social Security disability benefit is not reduced like SSI for having wages. So there's actually an incentive for a child with special needs that's able to perhaps work 10, 12, 14 hours a week to work enough to where they are accumulating those Social Security credits to become eligible for Social Security disability, which will not reduce because they work. So as an example, if one becomes eligible for SSDI off of their own work record, and let's say that they're receiving a benefit from Social Security of $500 per month, and let's say that they're working and their earned income is $800 a month, then 500 plus 800 is 1,300. Nothing to prevent them from receiving all of that on a monthly basis. So as we've discussed in prior sessions, government benefits are really substantial. They are significant. And because they are so valuable, it really pays dividends, so to speak, to learn how to navigate the government agencies and benefits and maximize on these benefits. Now, ultimately, in many situations, our children with special needs end up drawing off of a parent's Social Security record. So you could have someone that starts with SSI at age 18. Perhaps by the time they're 23, 5 years later, they're able to start drawing a Social Security disability benefit off of themselves. And then perhaps 10 or 15, 20 years later, they have a parent that starts drawing a Social Security retirement benefit, and that enables the child to draw off of their benefit. I did have a meeting just in the last couple of days down in my Louisville office where the father, who is an engineer, has started drawing his Social Security retirement benefits. Well, he's drawing close to $4,000 per month in Social Security retirement. And so the inflation that we have experienced in the last few years have driven up these Social Security benefits, including retirement benefit. So he's drawing approximately $4,000 a month. His adult son, who is about age 25, therefore became eligible to draw off of his father's record. And so the son is drawing about $1,800 per month. You heard me right. $1,800 per month in Social Security benefits. And on top of the $1,800 in Social Security benefits, the son works. He does not work a lot, but he does work. And so he's earning at a rate of about $600 per month. So you've got $1,800 in Social Security benefits, $600 in earned income, that's $2,400. And then the son is eligible for disability Medicaid because of the waiver and Medicaid waiver services, so disability Medicaid for health care. So the fact that he only works maybe 10 hours a week or something like that is not a problem with health insurance because due to the waiver, he has his disability Medicaid. Now, the father has been retired now for close to 2 years, and so the information is starting to come through for the son who's 25 regarding his eligibility for Medicare. And so you heard it right. It's possible for a 25-year-old to have Medicare, and they can still retain their Medicaid. And so here shortly, within the next few months, the son will have Medicare, will have Medicaid, will have Medicaid waiver services, his part-time employment, and he can have all of these simultaneously. It's really quite remarkable. Yeah, so he's able to contribute, and so the parents have recalculated what his expenses are, or what contribution he needs to make on a monthly basis, because he has to stay under the $2,000 resource limit in order to maintain eligibility, not for the SSDI, but for the Medicaid and the Medicaid waiver services. And so when you're earning when you're receiving $2,400 a month between earned income and Social Security, it becomes a little more challenging to stay under the $2,000 resource limit. But they're getting up to speed with that, and there's a way to handle that as well. And they have opened an ABLE account. So isn't it wonderful to have these tools at our disposal so that we can help our children with special needs maximize on their potential in the way of employment, living in the community, having an element of financial security, this type of thing. I have to tell you, with my focus on special needs dating back about 26 years, we didn't see things like this 26 years ago. It's really quite remarkable, the progress that has been made. But it's complicated, and it takes help to juggle and balance all of these things. And of course, I'm passionate about helping families with this because it's so incredibly valuable. Let's see. We have the Children's Disability Benefit, Disabled Adult Child Benefit. So children's disability benefit would be where a parent has a triggering event, such as death, disability, or retirement, and they're still a minor, and they can draw off of the parent's record regardless of disability. And then once they become an adult, reach 18 or age 19 if still in school, Social Security is going to cut off their benefit unless they go through an evaluation process to confirm their disability. And that's what helps them qualify for the Disabled Adult Child Benefit, or what they affectionately refer to now as Adult Child Benefits. Last but not least, you see college listed there. And we have a record number of special needs population in college. At the conference today, I met someone who has a family member with muscular dystrophy who's over in Illinois going to the university. And so They have waiver services and Medicaid, disability Medicaid for health care, and they're at the university, and the waiver helps provide someone to assist them with getting up, getting dressed, and getting on their way to classes each day, etc. So again, we're seeing how um, government benefits and, as an example, waiver services are helping people not just day-to-day care, but helping people push their potential forward, potential for education, potential for employment, and again, ultimately, a quality of life. So the life care planning encompasses all of this. It again pulls all of the elements together. And you can see there are a lot of moving parts that are changing as one matures and gets older in their special needs experience. All right, let me see if there are any questions. Not so far. I invite you certainly to ask questions along the way. There will be a bit of a repeat in terms of pulling together these various elements from prior meetings, but with some new material as well. So please bear with me. Okay, so 10 comprehensive planning steps. One is the address primary issues. It could be medical, it could be life and death. It could, in other words, and it varies by individual. I know my son has Crohn's disease, and we're constantly concerned with everything from his bowel, his liver, his physical health, and managing the Crohn's disease. Number 2 is create a life care plan vision. And that's how your vision for the future. How do you see things 5 years out, 10 years out, etc. And it's important to think about that because I was just talking to someone at the conference today, and it's regardless of how challenging things may get, regardless of whether you feel your hope meter is dialing down or back, know that there will be a brighter day, and do not give up hope on long-term things that you're hoping your child with special needs will be able to accomplish. Because giving up hope then affects the energy that we pour into those things today, that in turn determines those outcomes. Guardianship or alternatives to guardianship. Shoot, 26 years ago, guardianship was a given for a child with special needs. Now we have a thoughtful conversation with parents, and of course, as appropriate, involve a special needs attorney to determine if guardianship is the direction that we want to pursue or not. And if guardianship, then the question is full guardianship or partial guardianship. Guardianship of the person or guardianship of the person and estate. Will they have earnings? Will they have a bank account? Will they have money? And so there are a variety of considerations to determine what guardianship is appropriate, if guardianship is appropriate. And if guardianship is not a direction that a family wants to pursue, the good news is it's not guardianship or bust, that there are alternatives to guardianship, including certainly they're executing a durable power of attorney or healthcare directive. I shouldn't say or, but and healthcare directive or healthcare representative, so that a provision is made for perhaps parents or other important individuals to help be in charge when they're not capable of doing so. Identifying financial resources, very important. Resources that are in the form of government benefits, family resources, in other words, what all elements, employment, income, etc. We're also seeing individuals with special needs start to do some inheriting. And in cases where we've done special needs planning, of course, we're wanting that inheritance to be directed to a special needs trust, as an example. If it's a small amount that's not going to a special needs trust, but to the individual directly, then in most cases, we're able to spin that off to an ABLE account, as an example, if it's not appropriate to spend all of the money now. And the ABLE account then, with tax advantages, can hold those funds, invest those funds, and make them available at some point down the road when they have a need or a want that it's appropriate to spend the money on. Okay, prepare for life care plan costs. And that's, again, deals with the vision for the future. So where will they be? Will they be living with parents or other family members? Will they be in a supported living environment? Based on their unique circumstances, where do we see them and what kind of costs are involved? To what extent will the government or government benefits help with that cost? Or to what extent will those costs be borne by the individual or by family? And so these are healthy conversations to have so that the planning matches the future reality that you're hoping for and working to achieve. Number 6 is the letter of intent. So the letter of intent is becoming a more and more important element, and that's because as our special needs members of the community live life bigger, live life broader. That is not always just living at home forever, but being in supported living or perhaps attempting to live somewhat independently. And they're embracing employment. And in some cases, a retirement account through their employment. And then we have Medicaid and we have the waivers, and there are more than one waiver. And here in Indiana, there are about 4 or 5 different waivers. You have your family supports, you have your health and wellness, you have the CIH or Community Integration Habilitation Waiver. You've got the traumatic brain injury waiver. So there are numerous waiver programs, and the letter of intent focuses on what program are they on, and who are the appropriate contacts for that, and what are the routines and schedules for the various services that are delivered for them. The letter of intent, of course, a thorough caregiver guide, also includes medical history, all of the medical care providers that are involved in their life. Let's see. And then other documents such as birth certificate, Social Security card, government issued ID, their immunization records, a copy of their IEP or their 504. A summary of medical history, medical events, their blood type, their clothing size, their shoe size, diet issues, food likes, dislikes, food allergies, and Social Security contacts, and who's doing case management for the waiver that they're on, and who are the direct service providers. And I could go on and on. So there is just an accumulation of information that continues to grow as they get older. And if the plan is, if something happens to you, to have some friend or family member step up or step in to assist them, then the letter of intent is going to be their trusted guide. And so we have a template to help families with this. It's roughly 40 pages, and it's a fillable document. It can be printed out and filled out by hand, or it can be typed right into and created as an electronic document that can be revisited and easily edited and updated as providers, schedules, various medical information, and other things change or evolve in time. And so the letter of intent is actually step number 4 in the special needs planning process that we go through with families. And perhaps it would be helpful to pause and kind of run through those steps. You might be curious. There are 6 steps in most cases to the basic special needs planning process. The first step in a 2-parent situation is to attempt to make sure that if something happens to either parent, that the surviving, then single parent can keep their head above water financially. While we certainly want to plan for the child or dependent with special needs, we would never want to leave a surviving parent in an awkward situation of not being able to manage their financial affairs. That is where the plan was totally dependent on or predicated on there being no living parents, meaning all about the child with special needs, where the statistical probability is much greater that one parent becomes disabled or passes away, and then we have one parent trying to handle the full financial burden. So step 1 is to attempt to see that the parent in that situation, again, can keep their head above water financially. So very, very important. Step number 2 is what we call special needs trust funding. So, how exactly will we guarantee the special needs trust gets funded? And that's because when we look at funding sources, they are sometimes here today and gone tomorrow. And what I mean by that is that we could take a snapshot of the present situation, and if something happened to a parent or parents right now, we might know what funds would be available to flow into the special needs trust that we would work to create, actually step number 3, for the dependent with special needs. But some of those sources may not be here in 20 years. So if I'm working with a parent who's 50 years old, then they may think that life insurance they're carrying through work, but see that that trust was funded. And indeed, it might today, but 20 years later, when they're 70, they probably will have long since thrown the party, gotten the watch or the boot or whatever you want to call it. And that life insurance that is associated with work that they are counting on to fund the special needs trust would simply no longer be there. Also, one might say, oh, equity in my home, which seems to keep growing. And home equity is a wonderful thing. But by the time one is later in life, whether they would still be living in the same house, residence, condominium, or whatever is a big question mark. And it's not unusual for many of us in our latter years to be living in assisted living or eventually potentially in a skilled care nursing facility. And the equity in our home is actually paying the bills. So by the time both parents have lived to retirement, lived through retirement, spent from their retirement funds, also not necessarily a good source to ultimately fund a special needs trust because you're going to need to live retirement and those funds will help you pay the bills. So, the process of elimination starts to thin when you start looking at what may ultimately fund the trust unless one dies young and tragically as a parent. Okay, so great question, and thank you so much, Brian, for asking, but is there an amount to target for funding the trust? And the answer is there is no ideal or perfect number. What we do look at are things such as what government benefits may be there, what might our special needs family member be eligible for in the way of government benefits. We will also look at what their needs are relative to those benefits, meaning to what extent is family or non-government entities or, to what extent is family helping with expenses. We will also look at quality of life, because if the quality of life that the loved one with special needs is enjoying, tied to, of course, the parent's love for them and the parent's financial success, then frequently it takes more in the way of a special needs trust or more significant funding to maintain that higher quality of life that the child has become accustomed to. So as an example, if they want additional education or training, the trust can pay for that. If there's travel, entertainment, sporting events, going to Disney World, going to concerts, clothing, if there are things that they enjoy doing, despite their challenges or special needs, then in most cases, it's the funding and the trust that's going to provide for all of those extras. The government primarily focuses on food, shelter, and healthcare. And so the extras, the other things, which include cell phone, satellite or cable TV, Wi-Fi, Hulu, Amazon or Amazon Prime, transportation, perhaps a vehicle, perhaps a specially equipped vehicle, vacation, travel, again, sporting events, going to concerts, pursuing horseback riding, massage therapy. There's just all kinds of things that our kids with special needs benefit from. And so we use as a measuring stick what income we may want the trust to throw off to be sufficient to cover these expenses on a monthly basis without driving the trust into the ground. So we have trust funded at quite a variety of levels, 50,000 and 500,000. We have trust funded in excess of $1 million. So part of it is the quality of life. Part of it is government benefits and help. Part of it is their capacity to help or improve their own condition through employment of their own. And then just how expensive is their living. So we look at various resources that will come into play, what deficits may exist, and then we attempt to capitalize on those deficits that may exist monthly or annually to determine what lump sum accumulation in the trust or what balance in the trust would be sufficient to spin off that income level that it takes to pay the bills. So very helpful. I'm working with a family right now where the last parent just passed a few months ago, and there are 3 children living. 2 out of 3 have special needs. And we're right now in the process of measuring the monthly amount of income support each of these adult children will need compared to the funding that the deceased parent has left for the special needs trust. And, a well-funded trust is an incredible gift, It's always just a bit nerve-wracking to look at a trust and to toy with the idea of spending from the trust at a pace that is likely to shrink the corpus or principal of the trust down. And how long will the child with special needs live? And might we see a day where the trust is exhausted and is unable to support them or provide that income element that they are unable to achieve on their own efforts? So we try to be conservative with the extent to which we deplete the trust because we want them to go the distance. But at the same time, we look at the nature of the diagnosis and what projected life expectancy is so that we're thoughtful not to leave a large amount in the trust at the time of their passing, when those funds could have truly aided them in their quality of life while they were here. Thank you so much, Brian, for the question. Excellent question. Every family, every situation is unique and different, and we try to be thoughtful in how we approach each one. All right, so that's the letter of intent. We were talking about that caregiver guide that's loaded with information about them. And especially in situations where their situation is complex, or they would struggle to answer the questions for that caregiver that is attempting to step in when something happens to parent or parents. The letter of intent speaks volumes. It's also a love letter, so to speak, to that future guardian when you're no longer able to provide care or you're no longer here. Ultimately, it may be the adult sibling of the child with special needs. And again, what a gift to them to have a well-funded trust so that their sibling is not a financial burden to them, as well as to have a letter of intent so that they have a guide as to how to do the get up in the morning routine, how to do the get to bed at night routine, and everything in between. And again, we help families put these various elements together. Now, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that this planning process makes the conversation or conversations with those people that you want to assist or be helpful when something happens to you go so much more smoothly. That is, when instead of just simply saying, you'll do this, right? If something happens to me, you'll be the guardian, you'll be the caregiver, you will be the XYZ. It's so much more powerful to let them know that you're doing planning and that a part of that planning process is a well-funded trust. The trust will be guaranteed to be funded. And in addition to that, there are government benefits that we're planning in such a way that will be maintained, a letter of intent to provide all kinds of details about the day in and day out activities and programs and processes and people. And then, of course, government benefits. They've got the government benefits, they've got a funded trust, they've got the letter of intent. I mean, all these elements come together, and the person that you're talking to is, how do you spell relief? You spell it government benefits, a funded special needs trust, and a letter of intent. I got to tell you, absolutely. And so that's why we build that into every plan. So I had mentioned number 1 was making sure either parent can carry forward, either surviving parent can carry forward financially. And step number 2 is to make sure we create a guaranteed and dedicated funding source that's going to make certain the special needs trust for the loved one with special needs does get funded. Number 3, actually, we've not touched on, and number 3 is the attorney piece, but perfect timing because number 7 is legal instruments. So, so step number 3 is the special needs attorney, and again, we have a network of attorneys throughout Indiana, and we make an appropriate referral. The attorneys are experts in special needs. We work with the best of the best, unfortunately, and again, fortunately, as a result of our cases being so well developed, and the volume of work that we do, fees charged by the attorneys are very reasonable. Most people are pleasantly surprised at what the various attorneys that we work with charge for the services that are needed, be it estate planning documents, guardianship, or working with you to appeal a benefit decision. Yeah. Okay. Legal instruments can also include guardianship. I'm working with a family right now where the parents of, I believe, a 12 or 13-year-old, 12 or 13, went to court to get guardianship of their estate. And that's because this young person is receiving a settlement. So, so they became guardians of their own child. And so sometimes parents actually do need to go to court to obtain guardianship over their own biological child. That is most often we see when, again, they're receiving a settlement or some financial funds, and the court wants to make sure that the monies are used on their behalf. And so we frequently call this a restricted account, where there's some restrictions put on how the account can be used, etc. So we're in the midst of working on a situation right now like that. Excuse me. Sometimes those settlements come because of medical situations. Sometimes they come because a child has been harmed during the providing of a service. Sometimes it is a manufacturer liability situation, like a crib that collapses on a child or something else that malfunctions. Sometimes it's an accident, an auto accident, or they were struck as a pedestrian or something, or something happens where there's some amount of responsibility on someone's part, and eventually there is a settlement, hopefully without having to go to trial, but nevertheless, and these take years frequently to work their way through. But when they do come, then we usually have attorneys involved, and we assist in helping the process through so that all benefits are maintained, Medicaid is not lost, or Social Security if appropriate, waiver services, etc. And that the funds are there to help the child or dependent with special needs. But yes, so there's a variety of legal issues, and again, very thankful to have a very strong network of attorneys to assist with all of these legal issues and aspects of the special needs journey. Number 8 is a special needs trust /ABLE account. And it's not either or. In most situations, it's both. The special needs trust, initially, the need for that is as a result of a parent's desire to provide for their child with special needs when something happens to them, through life insurance, through 401k, through like home equity or whatever it is that they have. But unfortunately, reality is that without special needs planning or putting in place an appropriately drafted and executed special needs trust, funds in most cases will end up being inherited by the individual with special needs, and those inherited funds will block their eligibility for these benefits that are worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that really puts a strain on what resources have been left or provided for them, because with the absence of Medicaid waiver services, etc., the pace at which funds that may otherwise be available to assist for the child are spent so much quicker. So the idea is to, of course, let the government do as much heavy lifting as possible so that what resources are left by most often parents can pay for what the government can't or won't, lasting much, much longer. So we usually work on that through creating a special needs trust as a part of the estate plan. And there are special needs trusts that are created by the parents while they're living, and in some cases, there are special needs trusts that are created by family after the parents have died. So different trusts, different circumstances and situations. We're certainly familiar with all of them, and again, very pleased to work with the attorneys to see that appropriate treatment is given to each situation. Then in number 8, you also see ABLE accounts, and ABLE accounts are getting a lot more attention. I just did a workshop earlier this week for another nonprofit here in Indiana, and we did a combination. So in one single workshop, we did both ABLE accounts and guardianship, and we had a great time with that. But ABLE accounts are seeing a lot of popularity among our young people with special needs that are employed or working. And that's because they may have SSI, they may have some earned income. Basically, they have income that, if not addressed, may rise up to that $2,000 resource limit, putting their eligibility for SSI, Medicaid, and by extension, Medicaid waiver services at risk for loss. So an ABLE account can be a great vehicle in order to address issues of the resources. So let's say they're up to $1,950 in their checking or savings account. You could transfer $1,000 to the ABLE account. Now they're at $950. So it can quickly solve resource issues relative to continued benefit eligibility. Hold a family meeting, gather families together or your family together if you want to share with them the planning that you're doing, etc. And then, of course, periodically reviewing the life care plan that has been created. Okay. So family assets and planning is important. And more we're seeing it isn't just mom or mom and dad or dad, but it's grandparents, in some cases, great grandparents, aunts, uncles. More and more people are kind of getting in on the special needs planning and seeking to be supportive and helpful. And we love it. And we say, welcome. Thanks for being interested. Thanks for wanting to be involved. Employer benefits, life, health. So benefits that you may have through work, as you know, benefits as it relates to your child with special needs, especially health insurance, may hang in the balance as they turn 26. So it's always a good idea to check with an employer who's providing group health insurance to determine if they are eligible to stay on beyond their 26th birthday if they have a disability. Sometimes having a disability is not enough. Sometimes the employer wants documentation or verification that they are drawing Social Security, either in the form of SSI or SSDI. So there are sometimes incentives to pursue benefits on a timely basis because of the domino effect. And of course, those government benefits, include SSI, Supplemental Security Income Medicaid, Medicaid waivers, and then SSDI and Medicare tied to SSDI. Wills, advanced medical directives, again, these are the legal documents. Special needs trusts, and I mentioned there are different types of special needs trusts. It's really important to work with someone who deals with special needs planning on a daily basis so that you get the correct special needs trust, that your documents are drafted appropriately, etc. I'm really thankful to say that most every attorney I work with, I've worked with for 10 years or more. And so we've got a level of trust. Fees are very reasonable, and processors are in place. So it's really a good thing. Special needs trusts are mentioned, titling of assets and ownership and beneficiaries. Yeah. Okay. And Actually, that's the perfect segue because that's number 5 in the process. So far, we covered number 1, which is managing risk that something happens to a parent. Number 2, funding the trust. Number 3, the special needs attorney and the legal aspects and documents. Number 4, the letter of intent that we touched on for several minutes. Number 5 is coordination of assets. So coordination of assets is making certain that appropriate instructions are put on all elements of your financial picture. So these can include 401ks, 403bs, simples, SEPs, Roths, traditional IRAs, rollover IRAs, beneficiary IRAs. Can include non-qualified annuities, tax-deferred annuities. It can include 457 deferred comp, either through government, 457Bs, 457Fs, so different types of deferred compensation programs. And then there are investment accounts that are not retirement, investment accounts, that you may have at Schwab or Vanguard or Fidelity or something, and it's making sure that there are appropriate instructions on those as to how they are to be handled. And you might be sitting there saying, yep, I've got instructions on everything. But if we develop a special needs trust as a part of the planning process, then we have new information that affects these previously done beneficiary designations. So it's really important to circle back to the instructions and beneficiary designations on all life insurance, retirement accounts, investment accounts, perhaps CDs, government bonds, etc. So we try to be thorough in helping families align all of those things. And that's, again, step number 5 in the process. Step number 6 is family communication. And so perfect timing, host a meeting with family and friends. So step number 6 is making family aware of the planning that you're doing or the planning that you have completed, letting them know that if they want to be generous or want to be helpful, that there is a special needs trust in place that they can participate in or assist with. We also want to let them know that it's important assets not be left directly to your child with special needs. So that's the power of putting a trust in place, a special needs trust, in place. You don't simply want to say, don't help my son or don't help my daughter, but how much more powerful is it when you say, don't leave assets to, Bobby or Susie directly. Instead, please leave assets to this special needs trust that we have created, and you can provide them with information. So in step 6 of the process, what we call family communication, I actually draft a letter that is print ready for parents or families to send out to other family members. So we really make it easy. All you have to do is have their email addresses and broadcast the letter to them. It's not a fundraising letter, so no one need get their nose bent out of shape. But it's more informational and very light touch. People really like the letter that we put together, and it tries to strike the right tone regarding the function level and developmental level and child versus adult of the dependent with special needs. And then sharing information about the future vision with family, discussing any concerns and options for future care. Share news of the Special Needs Trust, again, step number 6 in our process. Special Needs Trust funding, step number 2. Letter of intent, step number 4, so forth and so on. So you can see how we have put together this special needs planning process, because it takes all of these different elements and steps and organizes them into a very thoughtful and careful approach. Okay, I see someone in chat with a comment. Thank you so much. What happens to any money left in the trust that isn't spent? And again, it's Brian. All right. So the answer is it depends upon what type of special needs trust. So there are several types of special needs trusts, and one type is what we call a third-party trust. So a third party's let me see here. Hang on. I think we may be covering this in a slide. I'm just trying to make certain. Let's see here. Oh, table accounts questions. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I'm always updating these, so I'm trying to make certain of what all we've got on tap. Okay. All right. So it depends upon the trust. And there are several different types of special needs trusts. A third party special needs trust is the most common special needs trust for a parent's estate plan. That is the type of trust that you would list as a beneficiary for your child with special needs for leftover retirement funds or investment assets, etc. So a third party special needs trust welcomes money from anybody, even strangers, a GoFundMe account, a neighbor, a godparent, as well as parents, grandparents, great aunts, uncles, etc. And for that type of trust, anyone, frankly, anyone's assets are welcome, except for the child with special needs. Their own personal assets are not welcome in the trust. And as long as that trust is set up before parents pass away, then that trust can be the recipient for any and all assets they want to leave to the trust. And then down the road, when God calls the trust beneficiary home, 100% of what's left in the trust can catch up with those remainder beneficiaries. So I'm pleased to say that it is not necessary to leave assets from the trust to the state or other entities. The trust assets can stay with the family. If one is working with a situation like we mentioned earlier, where you've got benefits that are coming by settlement, etc. Now we're talking about assets or benefits that are really belonging to the child or dependent with special needs. And those are not welcome in a third-party trust. So assets that belong to the individual with special needs need to be placed in a first-party trust. Again, need to be placed in a first-party trust. And that type of trust does indeed have what's called a Medicaid payback or a Medicaid lien. And that means upon the passing of the trust beneficiary, the state can be expected to step in and seek to reimburse themselves for benefits afforded the individual while they were living. So knowing how valuable Medicaid benefits are for waiver services and for health care, if one has received benefits for many years, it's difficult to imagine their passing and a trust having enough assets to completely pay off the state. And then on top of that, perhaps have funds left for others to divide up. So it really is helpful and valuable to do planning as early as possible so that we can use a third-party trust where the state will not get a dime. But nevertheless, third party and first party are two of the most popular. Then there's also something called a qualified disability trust, or a QDT, qualified disability trust. And so if a trust meets specific criteria, it is possible for the trust to enjoy a large tax exemption. You heard me right. To actually enjoy a large tax exemption, which may make it possible to have a trust and to have a funded trust while paying little to nothing in the way of income taxes. So that's, again, a QDT or a qualified disability trust. Then there is what's called a Miller Trust. And a Miller Trust is a trust that helps deal with income issues. So if one is perhaps earning a decent income, they are receiving a Social Security benefit. If their total income from all sources put together rises above a certain level, then we may need to consider a Miller Trust where income can go and it does not undermine their continued eligibility for Medicaid. And therefore waiver services as well. So we've talked briefly about a first-party trust, a third-party trust, a qualified disability trust, and then there's also the Miller Trust. So those would probably be four of the more popular. There's also what's called a pool trust. And a pool trust is a trust that is offered by a nonprofit organization. The most popular here in Indiana would be the ARC of Indiana. And the ARC of Indiana does offer a pool trust. And that can be helpful in some family situations where one simply doesn't know who they might have serve as trustee. Also, the pool trust can be helpful if there are not a lot of funds and you really want them stretched out where they'll last. That's another example where a pool trust can be helpful. And in some cases, it may be a little less expensive to set up, but not always. But there, again, are a variety of circumstances where a pool trust can be helpful. So there are different trust options. So part of the conversation I have with families is talking with them about their situation, their circumstances, and what option may be most appropriate. All right. All right, so group benefits, and we always, of course, take a look at group benefits as we move through the special needs planning process, taking into consideration what group life exists, life insurance exists, short and long-term disability, employer-sponsored retirement accounts, supplemental benefits like AFLAC or other things that one can opt for, and then other things. So this is always a factor in planning. Okay, then outside of outside of employer benefits, there's also, of course, the government benefits, and we have touched on most of these. Social Security retirement income is an entitlement benefit, and again, that's something a parent could draw. Believe it or not, if our children with special needs live long enough, they can draw a Social Security retirement benefit for themselves. Social Security disability insurance, either drawing off of their own record or that of a parent, family benefits, spouse and survivor benefits, children's disability benefit, and Medicare. All of those are what's called entitlement benefits. That means one is enjoying the benefits of that because someone is paid into the system. Public assistance, on the other hand, is more based on diagnosis and financial need. And so those benefits, of course, are familiar to you. SSI, Medicaid, Medicaid waivers, and then other programs mentioned there as well. Okay, entitlement benefits fall into usually the retirement, disability, or family benefits categories. So retirement would be, again, paying into the system. You reach retirement age, that can be age 62 to 70. When parents start drawing Social Security retirement benefits, frequently does have a ripple effect upon your adult child with special needs. So there are considerations, things to consider with when a parent may want to start drawing a Social Security retirement benefit. Every situation is different or unique. So I may have mentioned earlier that as a part of participating in the series, we're making available a free individual consultation. You should be hearing from Jamie Sturkey, our parent advocate and relationship coordinator. Very easy to get a time scheduled, and it can be in person in my Indianapolis or Louisville offices, or it can be virtually by Zoom without your having to go anywhere. So retirement benefits, then disability benefits, and then family benefits. Family benefits are adult child benefits drawing off of a parent's record from death, disability, or retirement. Family benefits as well. Let's see here. All right. So we mentioned retirement was age 62 to 70 for parents. So you can draw Social Security retirement as early as 62, wait as late as 70. The benefit does not continue to increase beyond 70 except for cost of living. So there's really no need to wait beyond 70. If you've heard horror stories about someone drawing Social Security retirement and then attempting to go back to work, once one has reached full retirement age, which for most, not all, but for most, is age 67, then there's no reduction on your Social Security retirement benefit if you continue to work or retire and go back to work, that type of thing. So one would want to be cautious on retiring and drawing Social Security benefits prior to full retirement age of 67. And then there are survivor benefits. So survivor benefits are upon the death of a parent, and survivor benefits can be literally from birth to grave for someone with special needs. But those benefits, the retirement benefit is usually a max of 50% of one's full retirement age benefit. Survivor benefits, though, can be 75 to 100% depending upon the circumstances. And in those cases, the benefits can be $3,000 or more per year. You heard me right. $3,000 or more, I'm sorry, per month, not per year. So we're seeing individuals drawing off of parents' record on a survivor benefit basis, which is at least 75%. So back to the case we were talking about earlier, where I said that a parent had retired and their Social Security retirement benefit was about $4,000. Well, the child in drawing just shy of 50% is drawing about $1,800. Well, when the father passes away, that will go to 75%. So the child will be drawing $2,300 to $2,400 per month in benefits. So again, these really get quite substantial. It's so important to manage them. So survivor benefit, we touched on this earlier, something happening to in steps 1 and 2, parents prematurely die before retirement, or disability or retirement. So any of those trigger adult child benefits or child Social Security benefits. Yep. Okay. Medicare we touched on. Medicare, of course, is tied to SSDI. So when our young person starts drawing Social Security disability insurance or income, they become Medicare eligible typically 2 years later. So if they're able to start drawing Social Security disability, not SSI, but SSD or SSDI, then after just 24 months of that, they can become eligible for Medicare and still retain their Medicaid. Again, they can be dual eligible, have SSI, SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid, waiver services, SNAP, and other government benefits. Quite valuable. I love helping people manage and juggle these various benefits. Okay, the needs-based or means-tested benefits, of course, are primarily the SSI. And we talked about that earlier in the government benefits and programs section. But SSI, again, up to close to $1,000 a month. Wow. Really has gotten substantial in recent years. Okay, and then extra programs that one may or may not be eligible for. So on the legal side, we touched on most of this, but we'll kind of summarize. You've got preparing the letter of intent, which is the caregiver. Unfortunately, we have a fillable template, about 40 pages. So it's wonderful, very thorough. And then people frequently supplement it or add to it the extra documents we talked about. Birth certificate, Social Security card, IEP, neuropsych eval, immunization records, and other things. Guardianship and alternatives, we covered that. Choose successor caregivers. That's the backup team. Who's next if something happens to parent or parents? Get wills, advanced medical directives or healthcare representative documents, the power of attorney, the balance of the estate planning. Look at trust. Trust can be for the children without special needs to help get them launched. Special needs trust for your child with special needs. Look at the titling of assets, the beneficiaries, as we discussed before. The TOD, which is transfer on death, and POD, which is payable on death. So TOD, or transfer on death, that rider is used for non-retirement investment accounts. Again, non-retirement investment accounts. And then POD is payable on death, and that's the flip side. That's what's used primarily by individuals for updating bank account instructions, primarily bank accounts. Okay. We went through the different types of special needs trusts. So I'm going to go third party, first party, pooled special needs trusts. The Special Needs Trust Fairness Act, believe it or not, it's possible for an individual with special needs or disability to set up their own trust. They cannot be the trustee, but they can set up the trust. And then there's disability trust, the qualified disability trust we talked about, and Miller Trust. ABLE accounts, I think we touched on this earlier in an earlier session, but ABLE accounts have been around for about a decade. Indiana's program got up and going about 6 or 7 years ago, and they're off to the races. So ABLE accounts we'll want to consider, especially with unintended inheritances and or if they do get a part-time job and we want them to start saving their earnings. ABLE account's very easy to set up. You go to the website, a half hour later, the account's set up and you electronically transfer money to the account. Okay, as we are into our last 10 minutes, I reserved a few minutes for questions on any of our sessions throughout the series that we have been working through. And I'm going to pop out of this and stop the sharing. Let's see here. All right. So questions that anyone has on any topic that we've covered or any topic we haven't covered. Now is your opportunity because again, we left time available to be able to do that. Okay, so let me see if we've got nothing in chat at the moment. Again, does anyone have questions on special needs trusts? Okay, we've got someone. Okay. Let's see. Thank you so much for that. Again, Brian, you've been a real trooper this evening. I'm so thankful. You mentioned having lawyers in your network or that you work with. How do you find them? Well, I find well, how you would find them would be through reviewing your situation. We make an appropriate match between yourself and one of the attorneys that we work with. It may be one closest to your geographic locale. It may not be. So much work is done by Zoom or virtual these days. But as far as how I find them primarily through people I work with that have already worked with an attorney, and I introduce myself and learn more about their practice to see if the attorney may be one that we want to consider in our informal network. Also through industry associations and events, such as the Estate Planning Council. And then through attorneys I currently work with, in other words, their awareness of attorneys. And then there are also some special needs organizations where one can sometimes find a special needs attorney. One would be the Special Needs Alliance. Again, Special Needs Alliance, which is a national organization, and Indiana has several attorneys that participate in that national organization. And then sometimes people have a legal benefit through their employer. And that might be Hyatt Legal or MetLife or MetLife Legal. And there are some other plans as well. And so sometimes I meet attorneys as a result of those that are participating in the respective network for that legal benefit that they have available through their employer. So my apologies for the long-winded answer, but it's a combination of a variety of sources. Okay, let's see. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so as we wait for that, I do want to mention that Jamie Sturkey, our parent advocate and relationship coordinator, should be reaching out to you by email, thanking you for participating in the series, and then letting you know or reminding you that we are making available a free individual follow-up consultation that can be in person or by Zoom, and certainly encourage you to take advantage of that. it costs you nothing, and we're able to look at your specific individual situation, what you've done so far, and perhaps we celebrate and applaud the great work that you've done. Perhaps we find some appropriate next steps that we can direct you on or provide you with guidance for. So please respond to her email. And she has my calendar, and she can get things scheduled so that we can have that consultation. I'm very pleased to say that I do have some Saturday hours. So if Saturdays are really important to be able to get together because it doesn't interfere with work or other activities, then please be aware that we have Saturday hours, just a matter of going out whatever number of Saturdays to where we have an opening. And that could be for an in-person meeting in either my Indianapolis or Louisville offices, or again, it could be by Zoom. We do have some hours later in the day when I'm not doing a workshop like this evening, but Jamie can assist you with finding a time that is most helpful. And if you need a referral to an attorney, again, also respond to Jamie's email so that she can work with me and coordinate so that we can make an appropriate referral. Well, we're down to just a couple of minutes, and I would be remiss if I did not thank Lisa for being an incredible both inspiration and encourager, and working through the project that she is so passionate about to help bring the material that we have to you, over these past weeks. So again, you'll hear from Jamie. I look forward to meeting with many of you, either virtually or in person going forward. And Lisa, again, thanks so much for your dedication and all that you've done over these many years and many years to come. And I yield back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Gordon, and we really appreciate your dedication and all the information you can share with us. I think that your last bit there about the email from Jamie maybe answered Brian's last question, because he was asking how to set up a meeting with you. So just want to make sure, Brian, if there's anything else, let us know.
All right.
But I will be reaching out to everyone who registered for this. There were a few people who didn't come this evening with information on how to see this actual video and a reminder on filling out our evaluation form tomorrow. I hope everybody has a great evening, but I think that's all we have for tonight.
God
Thank you
bless.
so much for being here.